Patrick, hey, congratulations on your new documentary, Saints and Warriors.
Thank you so much.
More of a congratulations is being showcased at this year's Cinequest, one of the most prestigious film festivals around the world. How do you feel about that?
It feels pretty good. Yeah, we just had a world premiere a few weeks ago in Montana at Big Sky, and to be able to come directly out here to Cinequest is absolutely amazing. It's such a big festival. Yeah, even just the theaters and the venues here are just a whole other level. So yeah, it's a really exciting time.
It's a wonderful festival, so congratulations with that. So we have to ask that obligatory question is what actually sparked you to make this documentary in the first place?
Yeah, well, this is a really personal story to me. So, the story of Saints and Warriors, it's following my local village team, the Skidegate Saints, who are widely considered one of the greatest Indigenous basketball teams of all time. They're compared often to the Chicago Bulls of the 90s. And as they're all knocking on 40 and the tail end of their careers, they've won almost every championship for the past decade at Canada's largest basketball tournament, the All Native. And this year, that we cover in the film actually documents a pretty pivotal part where the three stars of the young generation of the Saints defect to the big city all-star team to compete against the Saints. So there's a lot of personal drama there. Like that all came together. But what's really sparked it was knowing how basketball's really played an important role in my life, even without being a basketball fan. Like in my Indigenous community, basketball has replaced religion. Basketball is a foundation of everything. You know, our of the Haida Nation is captain of the basketball team. Our previous president was a basketball announcer. Like at certain points, like basketball was part of the leadership of every Indigenous nation on the west coast of Canada. So when I got asked what would be my first feature, I knew immediately this is the story. I need to tell my home community's story of how basketball became a means to keep our culture and strength alive through some of the most oppressive eras of Canada's Indian Act legislation.
Now, for you personally, did
Mhm.
you play on the basketball team or just mainly just a fan or just watched?
Actually, I didn't play, somewhat out of spite in some ways, because I was an artistic kid. I would be with all of my uncles carving and stuff like that, where the basketball players were usually the ones who were beating me up. And so out of spite, I refused to play. Like I'm 6'3", so like I would be one of the tallest players on the team. But even though I didn't play, uh, I just the memories of going to basketball games with my grandmother, like those are some of my favorite memories. Like she always had her spot at the top of the bleachers. We would always go there. And when I think back to some of my like she's not with us anymore. And when I think back to those memories with her, the time at the basketball court were always the ones that come top of mind to me.
Now, tell us more about this basketball tournament.
Mhm.
This league that's actually created. I mean, what are the specifications for this league? Where the teams come from and so on.
Yeah. So up north, so we are right on the Alaskan border. So we're probably about 50 miles south of Alaska. And in fact, we play a lot with other indigenous communities from Alaska. So it's basically from southern Alaska down to the south of BC to Washington State. And so you have at this one tournament in particular, the All Native, you have over 40 different Indigenous nations representing and sending their teams up to compete. But each community, we don't actually have a league. It's not like a regular season thing. What we do is we play year round. In our community, we have the gym open up every single Tuesday night and other nights throughout the week. And it's just pickup. So it's a younger generation, older generation. Everyone just plays basketball year round and especially in the wintertime, because that's typically our basketball season. And then we have a series of tournaments throughout the year that we host. So in Haida Gwaii, there's about five major tournaments that lead up to the big all-native tournament that happens on the mainland in Prince Rupert every February.
So in reality, it is somewhat official amongst the communities up there.
Oh, definitely. It's our activity. There's not much to do when you're in a remote community that takes like 3 days to drive to from the next major city. So when you're up there, you play basketball. Everyone plays basketball, and you get to see everyone grow. You get to test your mettle against neighboring villages every once in a while. So you get to invite teams from up the island or from the mainland and play against each other.
Now, more about this Haida community. It's a very isolated, small community. I don't want to say like in the middle of nowhere, but that's what it almost sounds like.
Yeah, so Haida Gwaii is an archipelago of hundreds of islands off the northwest coast of British Columbia. So it's the furthest west point of Canada. It's about an 8-hour ferry from the mainland, and there's only 5,000 people on Haida Gwaii between all of our communities, half of which are Haida, which is our Indigenous nation, and the other half are non-Indigenous Canadians who've come and moved there. So it's quite remote. You do have to drive. So the biggest city in British Columbia is Vancouver. And to get from Vancouver to Haida Gwaii is 2 days of solid driving plus an 8-hour ferry. So after 3 days, you'll be able to finally get there.
Now, the subjects of your film, who did you want to choose particularly to showcase, and how did you convince them?
Yeah, well, the two stars of the film are the president of the Haida Nation, Jason Alsop, Gaagwiis. He's the captain of the basketball team. And of course, this film covers far more than basketball. It's really an encapsulation of our Haida history since time of colonization, but then also our 50-year battle for sovereignty to get our land back from the Canadian government and provincial government. And so it was just a natural thing for Gaagwiis to be a part of this, like as one of the stars of the film, not only through basketball, but also through the political story. So it wasn't very difficult. He felt it was a responsibility to represent our culture and our nation in this story. And then the other key character is actually Desi Collinson, who's a clan member in my family clan. And he's considered like one of the all-time greats of Indigenous basketball. And he's also very charismatic. And so yeah, I think the two of them just naturally fit into this role. Of course, when we started, it was such a big story. There were like so many storylines we could have gone with. And so we just showed up um, and captured as much as we could. And it wasn't until probably a month into filming that we realized, okay, these are core people that we're going to emotionally tie the story around, that we're going to enter this world for the audience through. And so yeah, it's of course it's the personal things like these are people you were raised with, so they also have like that understanding. So I've known these people my whole lives, and so I think it was just natural. Like we were able to look at this as a bigger opportunity to tell the story of Haida Gwaii and the Haida people and our culture and history, not just basketball. So I think it was pretty easy when we all understood that that was what we're doing, something bigger than just us.
So, for clarification, initially it started off as basketball, but you managed to weave the narrative into the culture of the Haida community.
I've always known that's been from the beginning. So, um, in the late 1800s, Canada instituted a law called the potlatch ban, which made it illegal for Indigenous people to gather in groups larger than three, except church or sport. So, we learned to play basketball in these boarding schools called residential schools, where most Indigenous children were taken away forcibly from their communities. And it was a horrible experience, but what we came out of that with was this game called basketball. And so we created these tournaments to allow our communities to gather and keep our culture alive underground during the most oppressive eras of this Indian Act. And so it became a loophole because we could have 10 people playing a game and then a bunch of people watching. Um, and we just got really good at it throughout the years. And so it was a natural part of this story that I knew was going to be there. It was going to be our cultural history and fight for survival against colonization, because that is so interwoven with our experience of basketball. But then also it's tied in with our fight for sovereignty, because it was basketball that was a huge part of unifying all of our communities together at these big tournaments while we're creating our constitution when we're having massive battles against Canada. And so basketball is like one of those main pillars in our culture. It's like culture, sovereignty, basketball. That's how you would describe Haida Gwaii in many ways.
Now, in terms of production, when did you wanted to start your production for yourself, and how did you pull it off?
So The initial idea came up about over 3 years ago. Yeah, about 3 years ago. It's when I met my producer, Michael Grand. Michael Tanko Grand has been an absolutely amazing, not only friend and producer, but also ally to Indigenous communities and the work that he's done. Like I've worked with other people who come in and, they try to be extractive with stories and tell Indigenous stories from their perspectives who are non-Indigenous. Um, but this was really great because I'm one of two, as far as I know, active Haida documentary filmmakers that are actually working out in the world right now on feature films like this. And yeah, it's an amazing thing to be able to tell these stories and go into it. So going in, I knew that this had to be done in a way that wasn't the classic Western style extractive documentary process, which happens so often. It needed to be one that was guided by the community. And so, like, even up till the end, our key people, we had key stakeholders in the community who are executive producers that had final sign off to make sure that what ended up being the final version of the film was one that was appropriate. And so, going into it, of course, I guided it as a Haida filmmaker. I know the community. It's a story that I had to tell correctly. And if there were any moments that I ever felt that weren't appropriate or I was unsure about, I always ask myself, does this pass the auntie test? If one of my aunties saw it and then she slapped me upside the head, then I knew it wasn't a good direction. So, yeah, going into it, we uh we had of course the journey trying to get it funded. We had a lot of ups and downs. We were trying to get it funded throughout 2023. We hit basically the media apocalypse. What happened when the financial quarter or yearly financials hit in March 2023, where no one was buying anything. All the streamers were putting a hold on buying stuff, so we had to figure out how to get it funded. So we navigated the Canadian funding model and were able to raise our full budget and start shooting in late 2023. And the expenses were fairly high because we are going to such remote communities and we're filming basketball tournaments. Like you have to have a lot of coverage. Like when we're shooting the big tournament in Prince Rupert on the mainland at the All Native, we had a crew of 10 capturing everything. We had two sound people, we had two, camera units, like one at the hotel capturing the, behind the scenes and verite of all the guys getting ready to compete. We also had a team at the gym capturing the game. So there's a lot of footage, probably about 60 plus terabytes of footage that we captured just in that short time. But the entire filming process went by so quick. It's an amazing amount of things that happen in this film that all come to fruition, and it's all in like a 4 month span. We started shooting in mid-December and we pretty much wrapped in mid-April.
Now, was the ending what you actually expected? Because I know it was leading to a in a way a clash of the Titans and
Mhm.
for your story.
Yeah, well, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but let's just say that the emotional stakes of having this young generation play for essentially the bad guys, like the big city all-star team versus the small little village team, um, it led up to like something that was really exciting, very dramatic, and of course they face off in the finals. I won't say who won, but either way, it would have changed the film quite a bit, and I'm very happy with the way the film ended. It honestly, when I think about if we shot this a year earlier or a year later, it wouldn't be anywhere near the film it is now. We were there at that perfect moment to capture the personal drama and to capture the political drama as well, because as we were filming, we didn't realize. And we had known that this whole title battle was happening in the background, but it had been for 20 years, but it was all coming to a head in the middle of our filming. And so, all while this basketball tournament's happening, the Canadian government and the Haida Nation are in final stages of getting recognition of title. So, spoiler alert for real life, but the Haida Nation, as of really just a few weeks ago, became the first Indigenous nation in all of Canada to gain full rights, title, and sovereignty back to our land, which is huge. Like the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, came to the village of Skidegate and signed over basically recognition of our inherent right to govern and title to our land. So this is huge. And this film captures this amazing moment in time, this massive victory that's going to change the future of Canada and maybe even trickle down to the US.
It's amazing that you were at the right place at the right time for this documentary.
Yeah.
Well, I've taken a lot of your time already, Patrick, but tell us what's up next up the pipeline after this documentary, Saints and Warriors.
Yeah, so Michael and I are back working again. We've got a docu-series which we are heading into production here very soon. I co-founded an Indigenous modeling agency, one of the world's first all Indigenous agencies, and we're looking to do a docu-series about that. So we're just closing gap on funding, and we're heading into creative and probably production by the spring. So we've got a 10-part series, probably a 10-part series coming out sometime in I'd say 2026. That's going to be an exciting one to look out for.
Well said. Well, as audiences have a chance to watch Saints and Warriors at Cinequest and hopefully more film festivals down the road and other avenues, possibly, what is the one most important take you hope they walk away with?
I think the biggest thing is understanding not only who we are as a Haida people and understanding the indigenous context in which we live, but understanding the greater story of indigenous people across North America. So often we're considered like a monolith, whether it's not just one indigenous culture, but broken up into subgroups. Like in my province alone of British Columbia, there's over 60 different First Nations. It's
Hmm.
like we're like a Europe when it comes to different histories, languages, customs, and that's the case all across North America. So what we're showcasing with this film is our specific culture on Haida Gwaii, but through the Tournament of the All Native, you get to see dozens of other First Nations and distinct cultures. And I think the big takeaway for me that I hope people get from this is not only seeing how much people have had to persevere through, but what can come out from this? Not just sovereignty and land back, but the relationships that can be built between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in this continent. Like the goal is to build a brighter future together. And I feel like that's what this film is really pushing towards. It's how do we move forward in a good way together and not just dwell on the past.
Well said. Well, Patrick, thank you very much for carrying this conversation with us about Saints and Warriors, and enjoy Cinequest in San Jose for now, and hopefully we'll catch up again down the road.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye now.
Cheers.